Hello, we're going to be doing more proofs with parallel lines. This is section 3.6. This section has nothing new, no new topics at all. We're just going to do more practice with proofs. And this one, you're going to be watching me and discussing with me how to do these proofs. We're going to make plans together for all your proofs verbally so you can have discussions about them. So you'll need your assignment sheets out with your proofs. Let's get started. Here's your first proof. We're going to mark our diagram. If you look in here, we've got two lines parallel. So we've got S parallel to P. And then we have Q parallel to R, but how are we going to mark those so we know that they're parallel? We're going to put two arrows on those to show that they're parallel. Our goal here is to prove that one is congruent, angle 1 is congruent to angle 13. But before we start that, we're going to do a plan. And before we start our plan, we're just going to look at our diagram and figure out what is true on this diagram. What is true? So let's start off with angle 1. What on this diagram is congruent to angle 1? Well, angle 4 is congruent by vertical angles, right? And with angle 1, there's also angle 5 by corresponding. And angle 8 by alternate exterior, correct? So I can mark all those. 1 with 4, 4 with 5, and actually 4 with 5 there. Those are alternate interior. And 5 and 8 here are vertical, so we got all those, right? So what about 2? What's equal with 2? Actually, let's just talk about 1 and 2. What do we know about those? Those are supplementary. So angle 2, angle 3 is equal by vertical angles. Angle 6 and 2 are corresponding. And 2 and 7 are alternate exterior, and they're vertical. Let's do 1 some more. We have 1 over here. 1 is also equal to 9 because that's corresponding because of S and P here that are parallel. And 9 is congruent to 12, so by transitive we got 1. 12 is congruent to 13, so we can tie that back to 1. And 13 is congruent to 16, so we got a bunch of them going back there. I got too much red going on. I'm going to try to get some different colors going on here for those parallels. All right, so 2 is also congruent to 10 by corresponding. 10 is congruent to 11 by vertical. That goes back to 2 by transitive. 11 and 14 are congruent by alternate interior. That goes way back to 1. To 2. And those are congruent by vertical. So we only have 2 angles here. Really, 2 measurements. If angle 1 was 30, then everything in red would be 30. But how much would 2 be equal? The relationship between 1 and 2, they're supplementary because they're linear pairs. So we could just subtract 180 from 30 and get 150. So if we knew that measure of angle 1 and 2, we could find all the rest. I want you to notice that right here we're trying to prove that 1 is congruent to 13, and notice that 1 and 13 are both red, so they both are congruent. So let's see if we can get there. I'm going to clear everything off and get started. Let's at least put a dot that what we're trying to prove on those. I like to do that so I can see it visually. And I don't want to mark them as such because I don't want to make them look like they are equal. We're trying to prove that they're equal, so I'm just going to put dots on there.
So we made marks on 1 and 13 because that's what we're trying to do. So let's just make a plan. How are we going to get 1 and 13 to be congruent? What do we know that we can say that equals this and this equals that, and very likely use transitive? So where do you want to go?
1 and 4, I guess?
1 is equal to 4. Okay, so this is just a plan. This doesn't, and we can erase as much as we want because we're using pencil. So we're going to say angle 1 congruent with angle 4, she said. Okay? Now how is 4 going to get us to 13? And why is 4 is vertical? If I'm going to just put vert there.
4 is congruent to angle 12, and then we can do angle 12 is congruent to angle 13.
We could. So then we could go angle 4 congruent to angle 12. Why?
They're complementary. And if you do the thing...
They're not complementary, but they does start with a C.
Yes, they're complementary.
Corresponding.
Corresponding. I'm sorry,
It's
not
okay.
complementary.
That's All right. 4 and 12. So by transitive, we could say that 1 and 12, correct?
Yeah, but that's not...
But we're not yet. But not yet. We're not finishing there. Okay, so then we could do what now?
12 is congruent to 13.
12. Why?
Alternate interior.
12 and 13 are alternate interior. Okay. I am running out of space. That's one plan. I'm going to propose another plan. This is, how many steps is this? The given
3.
and 3 more.
4.
Oh, actually 4, because then we're not done because we need to then state that 1 and 13 are. So we're not quite done. We've got 1 to 4, 4 to 12, 12 to 13, and then we got to do 13 to 1. So that's
1 to 13. That's 5 steps.
given and 1, this given and this is 2 step 2, 3, 4, and then the end would be 5, right? Okay. So you have room there for maybe this is plan 1. This is number 1. I'm going to move over. You guys might have room down. I have hardly any room for down on this one. So this is my plan 2. Is there something that 1 and 13 are both congruent to right now without having to take so many steps?
5.
Say that, Amy, what?
5.
5. Let's look at 5. How, I'm going to put a circle around 5. How is, they're both corresponding. So if we did angle 1 is congruent to angle 5, corresponding. This is just a plan, so I'm not writing the whole reasons out, because we're just planning, right? Then this is your plan. So then what would we do after that?
Angle 5 is congruent to angle 13.
And what reason is that again?
Corresponding.
All right. Then we only have the last step of angle 1 being congruent to angle 13, and
Transitive.
for transitive, that's right. I'm going to put the 113 in there from my other one. All right, now this one has less steps. We have 1, 2, 3 plus the given 4 steps. Now, does it mean that this one's the plan 1's wrong?
Wait, is the last one transitive?
This would be transitive. Yes, it would.
Remind me what step we used to get to angle 1 is congruent to angle 13.
Yes.
What proof would that be?
On 1, it will be transitive like 3 times.
What?
This will be transitive also down here. Transitive down here.
Or okay, 3 times.
Yeah, we're doing transitive multiple different times.
So we did it from Yes, about 3 times, not 2 times, not 4
I
times.
don't know how I got it.
Okay. I want to also bring a point that this proof could have been done a different way also. I'm not going to write this plan for it though. Instead of using 5, Amy's wonderful to picking 5, 9 would have also worked, okay? 9 would have also worked. Okay, so you have 2 plans. You figure out which plan you want to use, write your proof, okay? We have a given, we have the statements. So what I want you to get out of this is that we had a discussion instead of you doing it by yourself. That's one thing. And another thing, you got to see my thought process of what I did before I even started. I looked up here and I said, what is true about all of these things first? Okay? Let's go to the next, number 2. Unless there's some questions, I don't want to go on. Is there any questions? Okay. Proof 2, same diagram. This time, we don't have both of them parallel. We have 1 and 13 congruent, though. Last time we were proving 1 and 13 are congruent. Now we're telling you that they are, and we're trying to prove parallel. So all that thought process that I went through here about all those being congruent are no longer true because only S, P, and are parallel to each other. We don't know that Q and R are parallel yet. You had a question, Amy. You're right.
I think I know how we can get there.
Okay. She thinks she knows how we can get there,
So if we write all the given at the top,
right?
and then from there we say that 1 is congruent to angle 9.
1 and 9. Are 1 and 9 congruent right now? These are transversals now. This is a transversal and that's a transversal. They are not necessarily yet parallel. So they are transversals. Is 1 and 9 congruent? Is that true? What reason?
Corresponding.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Is 1 and 5 congruent right now?
No,
Why?
because Q and R aren't necessarily
We don't know Q and R parallel yet. Okay, so we have to be on these yellow lines. We have to have our going through both of those angles to be able to work, right? The same yellow line. This one had 2 different yellow lines going through, right? Okay, so 1 and 9 is congruent. I do agree with that. So we could do 1 and 9, but let's keep going with your plan. I don't. Where are you going to go from there?
We couldn't make 9 and 13 though because
Are 9 and 13 congruent right now?
because Q and R aren't necessarily parallel.
Okay, so we can't do. We can still use the 1 and 9, maybe. What is 13? Let's get rid of just a second. I'm going to do this real quick. What is 13 actually congruent to right now? I left the transversal that has 13. It's congruent to 16 and 5.
Oh, and 1 is no. We don't know for sure if 1 is congruent to 5.
What is 1 congruent to?
4 and
4 for
Four.
sure.
and 9
And
and 12.
12.
Oh, if it's congruent to 12, oh, but 12 and 13 are on 2 separate lines.
Okay, so let me do this real quick. I'm my eyes needing to do something. I'm gonna have to clear everything. No, I'm not, because I'll clear that stuff down there. All right. So let me put back these. And I need just what's true. I gotta draw my parallels bigger, okay? And this is the transversal that goes with 13, right?
Yes. But we know that 1 and 13 are congruent.
We do? Oh, that's true. We do 1 and 13. We do know 1 and 13. We just know that. So we just got to get.
We could say that.
But
if 1 and 9 are congruent, then 1 and 13 are. Oh, but we're not proving that. If 1 and 13 are congruent, and 1 and 9 are congruent, then that means that
Are 1 and 9
Then
congruent?
yes. If 1 and 13 are congruent and 1 and 9 are congruent, then that means that 13 and 9 are congruent, which would make R and Q parallel.
Let's go back, make sure we understand this. Okay, so the given is that 1 and 13 are congruent, correct?
Mhm.
All right, so 1 and 13 are congruent with our given, right?
Mhm.
And you guys all agreed that 1 and 9 were congruent because this is a transversal right there, right?
Mhm.
So then the transitive property of equality says that those now are congruent because we didn't know, the only way we know from our given. And so if those are congruent, so if for visuals, we know these are parallel, right? We don't need that, but because those two that I have there, that does make these because of what reason?
Converse of the corresponding.
Corresponding. All right, so let's,
So really, I was right in the first place. I just didn't realize it.
could be. Could be.
That's-
All right, so I'm going to not write numbers because we might need to flip some things in between. So you said that angle 1, the given is 1 and 13. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 9, right? And what reason did we give for that?
Corresponding.
Yeah, I'm going to write on this side so I can have, I'll write it as corresponding. And I don't have to write the whole thing out. We're just doing a plan. That was angle 1 congruent to angle 13. Okay, so now what?
Angle 9 is congruent to angle 13.
9 and 13. Okay, yep. Angle 9 is congruent to angle 13. What's the reason?
Transitive.
Transitive. I'm running out of room. All right. Last thing is that R and Q, R is parallel to Q.
And that's the converse of the corresponding.
Yeah, make sure you put the converse word. Corresponding. Converse of corresponding. You need to write more out because you need that help. All right. I'm going to do something really quick. Questions?
Is there another way to solve that, or is that it?
Yes, there was probably a longer way. I think we could have done 1 to 4, 4 to 12,
And 12 to 13.
and 12 to 13. Okay? Does that make sense? That would have been the longer of the ways. You could if you wanted. It's totally. I think just having our discussion probably was enough. Is that okay? Okay. All right. The third one. This time, it's a smaller diagram. You can see it on your paper. Not quite sure why it's yellow up there on our screen. I know it's blue on your pages. All right. I personally like it when my parallel lines are longer. So the way I mark AC parallel to BD, I not only make my arrows on them, but I like to make them longer because I sometimes can't tell they're parallel unless they're long. And so I'm going to make my arrows on them. That's just my personal preference. If it helps you, and then that helps me to know the transversal. There are actually 2 transversals here. And we know that angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent. And that tells me both of them are touching one line. One's touching BC and BA. But 3 is touching BC and BD, but they're both touching just one. Which one is that one? BC. So I think that one, I'm going to make a different color, is going to be our transversal. Okay. So I'm not sure though. So I could make, as we go along, this is my plan, and I think that one might be more likely the transversal than the others. This one could be a transversal right there. Based on what we have, with the 1 and the 3, what do we know is true before we even start writing it down? What do we know is true up there? Based on the fact that, what are given, that we have BC parallel to AC and BD are parallel, and 1 and 3 are congruent. What else do we know?
3 and 2 are congruent?
We know 3 and 2. Why are 3 and 2 congruent?
Alternate interior.
3 and 2. So if I'm gonna, I'm gonna write that down as maybe a possible step. Angle 3 congruent to angle 2, alternate interior. Does that help us?
Yeah.
Sometimes that fact might help us, but sometimes it might not.
Yeah, because then we can do transitive and make angle 1 is congruent to angle 2.
And we're done.
And then we're done.
So sometimes your steps, your brainstorms, what we're kind of calling, or plans, they don't get you anywhere. Sometimes they do. So we write down as much stuff as we know in our plan. And in this case, it does help because we have 1 and 3 as part of our given, and 3 and 2. So we can do transitive. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, transitive, and we're done in this case. Okay? Have you noticed there's something that we use over and over and over?
Transitive.
Transitive property. Is there something else that we use over and over and over?
Substitution.
Substitution
We haven't used it
sometimes.
a lot lately, though.
What are some other things that you've noticed that you've been using over and over in your proofs?
Corresponding.
Yeah.
Corresponding angles, very good. Your alternate interiors, corresponding, it seems like almost more than others sometimes.
Yeah.
There's also one more. I've just drawn it to give you a
Vertical.
vertical angles we use a
Yeah.
lot too. So just realize that, especially with these parallels, we've been doing the corresponding, the alternate interior, alternate exterior, all this stuff. But this vertical angle and your
Yeah.
transitive, you're going to be using that over and over and over. All right. Questions about this proof? All right, let's go to the next one. Last proof. We're going to do the plans together to get some verbal. What I'm doing is I'm giving you little steps. First of all, the proof, you just filled in the blanks for a little while, right? And then instead of you filling in the blanks, I gave you little, asked you questions, like leading questions. What do you do? What relationship do you have here? Now, I'm walking you through the process without a written plan, but we're having a discussion about the plan, all right? Eventually, you'll just do it by yourself, but I'm leading you there. Your test was going to be coming up. You're going to have a test this week, and you will have 2 proofs on them. Those 2 proofs will be proofs you've already seen before. One of them will, and one of them will be brand new, okay? So I'm leading you through this stuff so you can, but they're very similar to what you've done in the past, so don't stress. All right. Let's do this one. We're trying to prove again parallel. We have only 2 of them lines are parallel. We have S and P, and I like to draw those long. This is not really how you're technically supposed to mark them, but I like it that way. And we know that 1 and 5 are congruent. I will mark that now. How can we get these ones to be parallel? R and Q to be parallel.
Well, if we do 1 and 2 are congruent, then we do transitive and substitute or transitive one of the 2 and substitute that in, and that would make 2 and 5 congruent. So then that would prove that Q and R are parallel.
So 1 and 2 are congruent. Why are 1 and 2 congruent?
Corresponding.
There's our corresponding, Josie. You just said that. We use that all the time. You're right. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. You said by corresponding. Let's see if that helps us. Ryan has a plan. So she now thinks that if we now have these 2 steps can get us a transitive. So what would be true with transitive then?
2 and 5.
This-
Technically, we would have to list that the other way then to make that work. 1 and it would be 2 is congruent.
So you want me to turn these around?
Yeah.
I haven't been a real stickler on the direction.
I know.
2 and 1. So we can now get
Just get too confused.
5 and 2. Okay, all right. So does having 2 and 5 be congruent help us? Before I write it down, does it help us with our plan to get 2 and 5 congruent?
Yeah.
Why, Amy? Why does it help us to have 2 and 5?
Because it's saying that this one's congruent, or 2's congruent to 5, which is saying that these ones are leading us to these 2 are parallel.
Yeah, so what kind of angles are 2 and 5?
They're opposite exterior.
Yes. alternate exterior. And if they're alternate exterior and they're congruent, then we know those lines are parallel, right? Okay, so we do need the angle 2 congruent to angle 5. And the reason was what again?
Transitive.
Transitive. Did I write it the right direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But
Then we can.
why does it matter on 2 and 1 which direction?
The only
She,
reason I did that is because then
she likes her
my, they can
she
she
cancel.
likes them to be
They
like
can
this
cancel.
diagonal looking thing here. So they
Otherwise,
look,
because if I have the 2 and 5 underneath each other, it gets confusing that they're supposed to be next to each other. It's
Okay.
just, my brain's just weird.
so then she likes, so then the 2's there, she likes to put the 2 on that side, and the 5's there, she likes to put the 5 on that
Just
side.
understood the organization thing.
Yeah, it's not,
It's not right or wrong. It's just something to keep my brain from going totally
Yeah.
crazy. Just my
and we all want that. All right, so R is parallel to Q. I heard something about alternate exterior, be cautious,
Converse.
converse of, yes.
Is it okay if on our proofs we just write converse alternate exterior instead of writing converse of the alternate
Yeah,
exterior?
This is what I would write if I was doing the proof. I'd say converse and alternate
That would drive me.
exterior angles. Is it theorem or postulate? Do you guys know?
It's theorem.
It's theorem.
How? I couldn't read that if I did that.
It just makes so much more sense.
I'm with you,
because
Amy.
You don't have to read like the whole long thing
I'm with
out
you,
and
Amy.
write it.
Converse alternate exterior angles theorem. And if you look in textbooks, they're going to have something similar. So it's
I
also,
know how to read it. It's just it's easier for me when I'm thinking through it to write.
right. So we have a plan for your 4 proofs. I've also we had some discussions about it. We walked you through a thought process before you start making a plan. Figure out what's true based on your diagram, okay? And don't forget that when you're proving parallel that we need a converse. I'm going to repeat all those 2 things on the next slide here. All right, 2 things. Find relationships with the things you know and you're given. So before you start, just list everything that's congruent, everything that might be that you might need, especially this at this point is congruent to what we've been looking for. And use the converse when proving parallel. Don't forget those. Are there any questions?